Hello, and welcome to part 2 of our lecture. And so what I'll do in this lecture is just pick up where we left off. And we were last on the following video provided by the New York Times. Be quiet, or I'll intervene or interject during this video.
Can tell you a lot about your future. Each bar shows how many new infectious diseases emerged in a year. In 1944, there was 1. In 48, 3. We have no immunity to new pathogens. Each disease on this list posed a new pandemic threat. It was around 1960 when the number began to rise. By the time 1990 rolled around, it wasn't just 2 or 3 new diseases that year. There were 18. Soon after, the trend became so clear, a scientist appeared on TV with a warning.
What worries me the most is that we're going to miss the next emerging disease, that we're going to suddenly find a SARS virus that moves from one part of the planet to another, wiping out people as it moves along.
That was 17 years ago, and today, stuck at home in a seemingly never-ending pandemic purgatory, it appears that we did not heed his warning. COVID-19 has opened our eyes to the danger, but has it opened them enough to look past this pandemic to what our future holds? We tracked down that same scientist today to ask him, how do you stop the next pandemic? He said the trend isn't looking good.
We see an increased frequency of emerging pandemics. We also still have the ones that emerged recently. We still have HIV, we still have Ebola, we still have H1N1. So we're adding to the stock of known pandemic pathogens with new ones at an increasing rate. That's not a good place for us as a species right now.
If you want to know how to stop the next pandemic, you first need to know why they're happening.
This is a brand new MacBook Pro and our prototype's ready for the first drop test. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Screen is perfectly fine, no scratches.
You gotta be kidding me. Having an ad this early in the video? Oh dear, sorry.
We humans are an ecological anomaly. There have never been 7.7 billion large body vertebrates of one species on this planet before in the history of Earth.
This is David Quammen.
Because
he's
a very unmystical black hole Darwinian materialist.
Well, David's a storyteller, and he's been writing about the origin of infectious diseases for decades.
So we are unprecedented, and we're causing ecological wreckage that's unprecedented, and there are consequences of that.
Pandemics emerge due to our ecological footprint, and our ecological footprint is accelerating exponentially.
Remember this guy? That's Peter Daszak, the scientist who warned us in 2003. He's sometimes referred to as a virus hunter. He goes out to preemptively find viruses before they find us.
It's the connection between humans and animals that's driving this. And that connection happens where people move into a new region through things like road building and deforestation, mining, palm oil production, timber, livestock production. People move into new areas, they come across wildlife that we've not really had much contact with. The pathogens spill over into them and then can spread through that connectivity.
With encroaching on their habitats and just many, many more opportunities for spillover events to occur.
Christian Walzer is a global veterinarian and executive director for the Wildlife Conservation Society.
The destruction happening at the edge of forests is one of the areas where we're very concerned. You're changing the trees that bats, for example, would roost on. They may be driven to an edge. They may be driven into an area where there's more human population. And suddenly you create a contact area which didn't exist before.
So what do these new contact areas look like? In this video, we're going to show you 3 ways in which our changing relationship with wildlife is increasingly creating dangerous pandemic possibilities. So let's say you want to sell toothpaste. No, peanut butter, wait, shampoo. Never mind, it doesn't matter. In all of those cases, you need palm oil. So you burn down a forest in Malaysia to grow palm trees. But that forest was home to some bats. So the bats find a new home near some fruit trees on a pig farm. But soon, a virus from those bats makes its way into the farmers who own the property. This isn't science fiction. This is how the Nipah virus came to humans.
Why was it getting from the fruit bats to the people? Because of habitat disruption. Most of the forest in northern Malaysia, where the bats would ordinarily be living wild and feeding on wild fruit, most of that forest had been destroyed. In place of the forest, among other human enterprises, were giant pig farms, piggeries, where thousands of pigs were kept in a single corral being raised for meat. Some of those corrals were shaded by domestic fruit trees that were planted to grow mangoes or to grow star fruit for another revenue strain for these pig farms. So the bats, having lost their wild habitat, are attracted to the domestic fruit trees. They come in, they eat the mango, they eat the star fruit, they drop the pulp into the pig corrals, and with it, they drop their feces and their urine and their virus. It gets into the pigs, spreads through the pigs, and then gets into pig farmers, pork sellers, and other people.
Land use change is one big reason more infectious diseases are making their way into humans. However, it's not just animal habitat we need to worry about. Animal diversity could be just as important.
Loss of biodiversity itself has led to emergence of disease. When you lose species, you tend to be left with certain groups, and if they happen to carry viruses, and if they dominate the landscape, you will be exposed to those viruses more than others.
This story doesn't begin in the jungles of Africa or forests of Southeast Asia. We begin in the American suburbs.
How do celebrities lose weight in what seems like a matter of days? Well, believe it or not, they don't starve themselves and they don't go on these crazy restrictive diets.
You gotta be
kidding
me.
And I know this basically goes against everything you've ever read in magazines or seen on TV.
Remember one of the isms we dealt with is digitalism?
System,
this
and it starts with understanding just one thing about your body.
You do not need to eat salad.
A kind of the pernicious effect of digital capitalism.
You can eat your favorite ice cream
Anyway.
or pizza.
Gotta be kidding me. There's never been this
If
many
humans
ads when I watched.
cut down the forest and turn it into a suburb, like those.
And none of these videos have anything to do with my internet search patterns, by the way. So just so you know, these are just completely random ads coming up. Sorry, my apologies. Anyway, yeah, this ad, this class is brought to you by weight loss formulas. And I can't even remember what the first ad was for.
Beautiful suburbs we know in semi-rural Connecticut, where there are great big lawns in front of nice houses, and there are hedges, and then there's somebody else's house with a great big lawn in front of it. That's really good habitat for white-footed mice and also for white-tailed deer. Not so good for larger mammals like foxes, like weasels, or for birds of prey. So the hawks and the owls tend to disappear. The foxes and the weasels tend to disappear from this environment. What happens then? You get more white-footed mice. You get an abundance of white-footed mice because their predators are not suppressing them.
Having an abundance of white-footed mice wouldn't be so bad, except they are the natural reservoir host for Lyme disease. This means they harbor the bacteria, but it doesn't make them sick. So if there was a biological diverse landscape, well, then
the pathogen is shared amongst the various hosts that are in that landscape. Many of these hosts are incompetent and are unable to actually transmit the disease. And so it becomes a dilution effect.
The net result of this reduction in biological diversity, changing the landscape, making it more fragmented, less forested, is more ticks infecting more little kids when they go out to roll around in the grass and bust through the hedges. So there is more Lyme disease.
And yet, COVID-19 may not have started this way at all.
In view of the ongoing outbreak, if you create a completely artificial interface where you go and capture animals regionally, globally, and bring them together at one place, like at a wildlife trading market, then you're obviously creating fantastic opportunities for viruses to spill over.
A pathogen from one animal might not be able to spill over directly into humans, but it could spill over into another animal, evolve or adapt, and then infect humans. With a rotating variety of animals stacked on top of each other, the pandemic possibilities are significant. This is one theory of how the coronavirus may have started in China.
Now remember, this is one theory, okay? It's not proven definitively that the coronavirus made the jump into the human population at these wet markets. It could have happened in a cave in a particular geographical zone that I'm going to be discussing later. Nonetheless, there's a reason why these kind of markets that treat animals barbarically should be shut down to begin with. Future diseases could spread in these kind of conditions, number one. And number two, just from an animal rights perspective, these kind of conditions, whether we're talking about these wet markets or some would say the kind of industrial farm conditions, all are just from an animal rights perspective, barbaric.
The thing is, in the past, a spillover event from this wildlife market may not have affected you.
We also have to take one step back from the sort of very romantic idea that these are isolated communities living in Central Africa. You know, I always point out that a rat, which you capture somewhere in northern Congo now, within 12 hours, you're in Brazzaville.
The Republic of the Congo now has a new modern highway and economic artery, thanks to Chinese assistance.
See, just 10 years ago, that would have been impossible. But then, well, China...
The national highway was complete and today stretches...
China wanted access to minerals to mine. In exchange, they helped with infrastructure. Now there's a road. We've created access ways, not only for the rare earths which are so important for your mobile phone, but for viruses as well.
If you catch the plane that evening and you take your rat with you because you want to bring it to your family in Paris, you know, it's less than 24 hours from a very, very remote community all the way to Paris.
But luggage is screened, you say. The rat would get caught. Maybe, but really, the rat isn't the biggest threat. It's you. Your bag gets screened. Your blood does not.
We all have a share of the responsibility. It's not just people in China who want to eat bats or who want to eat pangolins. That may be the immediate cause of this spillover. But in terms of the initiation of these things generally, there is also enough blame, enough responsibility to go around.
Beautiful.
Again, have no interest in Gordon Ramsay. This is ridiculous.
So beautiful.
The 3 ways in which a pandemic could start shown in this video all have one thing in common. Us.
Here's what we did. We changed the planet so significantly and so fundamentally that we dominate every ecosystem on Earth right now. We are the dominant vertebrate species. Our livestock are the dominant biomass on the planet. And that's the issue. What we've done is we've created this pathway through our consumption habits by which viruses can get from wildlife into people and then affect us. And our responses, we blame one country versus another. We blame people who eat one species over people who don't eat another. And we blame nature. Well, no, we need to point the finger directly at ourselves. This is not a whiny argument that the world's falling apart and it's our fault. This is an argument that says we are the reason why this happened. We therefore have the power to change it.
So how do you stop the next pandemic?
Well, this is what you do. Number one, you find out what viruses there are in wildlife. We estimate 1.7 million unknown viruses. Let's go out and discover them. Let's get the viral sequences. Let's get them into the hands of vaccine and drug developers and get them to design vaccines and drugs that are broadly effective, not just against one pathogen, but against a number of pathogens. But number two, and critically, we need to work with the communities that are on the front line of this. And that's a solution that the public are less excited by. It's old-fashioned. It's working in foreign countries with different communities that do different things. It's hard work, and it's less attractive to the voting public. We've got to do all of the above, high-tech, low-tech, but focused on prevention. It's possible, it's doable, let's get on and do it.
Great, let's do it. No more pandemics. There's just one problem. money.
Thank you, Mr. President. U.S. intelligence is saying this week that the NIH, under the Obama administration in 2015, gave that lab $3.7 million in a grant. Why would the U.S. give a grant like that to China?
We will end that grant very quickly, but...
That's Donald Trump canceling a grant that was funding research to stop pandemics, including studying coronaviruses in bats. But the grant wasn't going to China. It was going to, you guessed it, Peter Daszak. That grant started in 2015.
2015? Who was president then, I wonder?
We have to put in place an infrastructure, not just here at home, but globally, that allows us to see it quickly, isolate it quickly, respond to it quickly.
This is not a new fight.
But if we wait for a pandemic to appear, it will be too late to prepare.
What is new is our reaction to it.
It's nobody's fault. It's not like who could have ever predicted a thing like this.
What worries me the most is that we're going to miss the next emerging disease.
If we don't want more COVID-19-like events in the future, we need to stop pandemics before they happen. That means depoliticizing pandemics and investing in prevention.
I think we need to wake up. There's a certain moment right now where the public around the world, because this pandemic's got to every country on the planet, the public now see their own health is intimately connected to why these pandemics emerge through the wildlife trade or deforestation. So we need to really drive that message home that, producing a healthier planet will actually save our own lives and improve our own health.
This looks like a cool video game, but I do not have the luxury to play them. I've never had this.
I've always loved sci-fi.
YouTube.
And the idea of being right on the edge of discovery and frontiers.
Sorry, I'm finding this quite cool though.
And doing exploration
because I am still a geek.
to do all of that stuff. You get to use cloaking devices.
Okay, sorry guys. Get back to it.
Hey there, this is Jonah, the producer.
Oh my God, you put an ad right at the end. What a, excuse my language, dick thing to do, YouTube. Anyway, of course that ad kind of ruined my conclusion for this. What does Peter Daszak end with? Well, the same with the person from the Bloomberg video. That approach is what that Daszak was highlighting towards the end. It's called the One Health approach. Okay? But so far, what do the various videos reveal is that our modern way of life, our need for minerals or animal proteins creates risk, okay? And thus the risk society that we inhabit. Okay, I am going to show you now a video that deals with both risk society, the risks we have in our lives, and it's also kind of indirectly related to this idea of biopower. So let's go. Oh, not my day. YouTube, you are not my tube today. You are really a boob tube today. You're just being so annoying. Let's just try this again. Whoa! Oh my God. Do you see how many views this video has had? 204 million. No way. Anyway, here we go.
Set fire to your hair, poke a stick at a grizzly bear, eat medicine that's out of date, use your private parts as piranha bait. Dumb ways to die, so many dumb ways to die. Dumb ways to die, so many dumb ways to die. Toast out with a fork, do your own electrical work, teach yourself how to fly, what's this red button do? Dumb ways to die. So many dumb ways to die. Dumb ways to die. So many dumb ways to die. Dress up like a moose during hunting season. Disturb a nest of wasps for no good reason. Stand on the edge of a train station platform. Drive around the boom gates at a level crossing. Run across the tracks between the platforms. They may not rhyme, but they're quite possibly the dumbest ways to die. The dumbest ways to die. The dumbest ways to die. So many dumb ways to die. Be safe around trains. A message from Metro.
Now, what does this video from the Australian Metro authorities have to do with this class? Number one, did you see the various deaths in this video? A good number of them were from pre-modern deaths, such as stirring up a hornet's nest. Okay, that's a pre-modern death. That's nature killing you because you didn't respect the boundaries of nature. That's violating the One Health approach. But otherwise, everything else was a death by modern means, whether it was mass-produced superglue or the means of mass transportation, the train running you over. Okay. Now, what does this, so that's all examples of living in our risk society. Now, also going back to biopower. This is an example of biopower. You see, who owns the metro? Well, the state does. Why does the state invest in this advertisement that 1.9 million people liked, 204 million people watched? Why does the state want you to be safe around trains? Well, on one level, the state wants you to be safe around trains because they're concerned about your health. They don't want you to die. You might sue the metro authorities for your family's death around the metro system, or it could be something else. The state wants you to get to work efficiently and safely because a dead worker is an unproductive worker. If you go to the hospital, you usually cost the state money. And if you die, the state has lost a productive member of society. That's the assumption. That's what Foucault argues is the essence of biopower. That's why the state invests in biopower. Okay. Now, the subway can not only be a site of death, it could also be a site of the pandemic spreading. You know, see, here comes the risk society. Because we're all connected on modern means of mass transportation, closely packed to each other, these also serve as venues for the virus to spread. Now, let's look at the date. It's March 5th, 2020. This is before most of the world will go into lockdown. Let's watch this.
The disease is now officially in 85 countries, and it has over 95,000 confirmed cases. And
only 95,000 confirmed cases in March 5th. Today, it has about 27 million confirmed cases.
It's the reason even white people have switched to the fist bump and explode. Now, here in New York, because the city is so crowded, the risk of coronavirus is especially dangerous. Because you see, if corona can make it here, it can make it anywhere. And that's why city officials are taking action.
The MTA is stepping up its cleaning efforts to prevent the spread of the coronavirus on public transit. Workers are disinfecting 427 subway stations, wiping down the turnstiles, handrails, and ticket vending machines daily. In addition to that daily cleaning, the MTA says its full fleet of subways, trains, and buses will be sanitized every 72 hours.
That's right, New York is trying to keep the subway clean to protect riders from spreading coronavirus, which is a noble instinct, but good luck trying to keep the New York City subway system clean. Yeah, you can actually hear that paper towel screaming, "Ah!" And by the way, maybe I'm just noticing it now, but like, was I the only one who was like, wait, now they're cleaning the subway? What were they doing before? Oh, well, now we'll clean it every 72. What were you doing before? Although that video is a little bit funny because it actually looks like we're cleaning up so we can impress the coronavirus when it arrives. Yeah, so the coronavirus is gonna come on the subway like, wow, is this for me? But for real though, everyone on the subway is taking the threat seriously. If you ride the trains, you know what I'm talking about. People are avoiding handrails. The rats are wearing little hazmat suits. Yeah, even the subway masturbators have switched from lotion to Purell. Yeah. It burns, but it's responsible. And remember, you have to do it long enough to sing happy birthday twice. All right, let's move on. Because while humans are worried about getting wiped off the planet, there's another species that might be coming back.
Scientists say that they've discovered dinosaur DNA along with other biological material in a...
Okay, that's enough for Jurassic Park. Okay. The next video I'm going to show is the following.
Our bodies contain all sorts of microscopic organisms, like bacteria and viruses. Some of these are pathogens that can cause disease. Animals' bodies have them too. When a pathogen jumps from one species to another species that isn't familiar with it, it can exploit that new host's lack of defenses and cause illness. A pathogen that moves from animals to humans is called a zoonosis. Diseases like West Nile virus and Ebola both originated this way, and researchers think COVID-19 did too. Among humans, the majority of new disease outbreaks are the result of zoonotic diseases. And for the last few decades, the number of zoonotic disease outbreaks has been increasing. Looking at this chart, it might seem like humans are the victims of an onslaught of pathogens from animals. But what if these outbreaks are increasing because of something humans are doing?
There's a lot of things we're doing that are increasing the probability of pandemic-causing pathogens emerging.
This is Sonia Shah. She's a science journalist who writes about the history of pandemics.
Right now, we've used up over half of the terrestrial surface of the planet.
Humans have been using more and more land for hundreds of years, but that land use has accelerated in the last 100 years. Today, satellite imagery shows us exactly what this expansion looks like. We're expanding our cities, erasing forests, and reshaping the land for agriculture. And sometimes that expansion is the result of war. That's what happened here in West Africa. It's an area that today includes Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia.
There was a forest that once covered that area where the three countries meet.
Throughout the 1990s, civil wars in this region killed thousands and forced many more from their homes.
Hundreds of thousands of refugees fled into that forest. They cut down a lot of those trees. They're making way for their homes and cutting down trees for charcoal and farming, etc. And you can actually see the change in the forest cover in satellite images. If you look at the early 70s satellite images, it's almost all green. And then you look at late 1990s and it's mostly brown because only a small fraction of the original forest remained.
Here in a village in Guinea is where researchers think an outbreak of Ebola began at the end of 2013. Like the rest of the region, this village used to be a forest and also happens to be a natural habitat for wild bats. Researchers believe the outbreak started with a boy named Emile, who died after he was exposed to fluids from a bat carrying Ebola, which quickly spread from his family to his village, to other villages. As humans develop and transform wild animal habitats, events like the Ebola outbreak are becoming more and more likely.
We're paving over wildlife habitat, which means it's much more likely that pathogens that live inside animal bodies will make their way into human bodies.
And that's because animals end up living much closer to us. But in many cases, those animals don't survive human encroachment into their habitats in the first place. This chart shows the biggest extinction threats facing different animal groups. For most of them, the biggest threat to survival isn't pollution or being hunted, it's the loss of their habitat. And a disappearing species creates a different opportunity for zoonotic diseases to jump to humans. Take West Nile virus, for example. It originates in birds that migrate from Africa to North America in the summer. It typically infects humans through mosquitoes. But West Nile virus was never a problem in the US until 1999.
That's because we had a diversity of bird species in our domestic bird flock.
In a diverse bird population, some species are good carriers of West Nile virus, and some aren't. North America once had a large population of birds like woodpeckers and rails that don't easily carry the virus. That made it much harder for the virus to spread among the bird population. But then we started disrupting those birds' habitats.
What's happened over the past 50 years is we've lost a lot of that avian biodiversity. Woodpeckers and rails are now pretty rare. What we now have instead are a lot of species like American robins and crows.
Crows and robins are much more adaptable to a changed environment, but they also happen to be better carriers of West Nile virus.
The fewer woodpeckers and rails you have around and the more robins and crows you have around, the more West Nile virus you have around in your domestic bird flocks. And the more likely it becomes that a mosquito will bite an infected bird and then bite a human. And that's exactly what happened in New York City in 1999.
Before 1999, no one in the US had ever died from West Nile virus. Since then, around 150 people in the US have died from it every year. The places where humans are encroaching on wildlife are the frontier for the next pandemic. That means one thing scientists can do to prevent it is to watch those places really closely.
We don't know which microbe is going to cause the next outbreak or pandemic, but we do know how that happens, and so we can really do active surveillance in those places where it's most likely to occur, places where there's a lot of invasion of wildlife habitat.
But preventing future outbreaks might also require us to rethink our relationship with nature, and to understand that as we take over more and more of the planet, there's a cost to the animals that live there, but also to us.
Just one more video after this, I promise. But hopefully you're getting a picture in terms of a theory. What do all these videos suggest? Number one, modernity according to Ulrich Beck. As we become more modern, we create risks. And what did every single one of these videos show you was that the risk we create is the increased likelihood of spreading an existing virus that has been known to humanity before, such as Ebola. Ebola was first emerged in the 1970s. But this is a story of kind of the environment. What does an environmental history show us is that the more the environment is exploited, the greater chance of the spread of pandemic diseases over history. In other words, this isn't a hypothetical. That's what the New York Times graph showed us. Now, what I call anthropogenic security is this. Anthropogenic security refers to a time period. It's taking a term from actually geology. And this geological theory is that As of the Industrial Revolution, the human species entered a new geological era. It's no longer in the Holocene, but in the Anthropocene. And the Anthropocene represents the geologist's theory that human activity has such an impact on the planet, it is transforming it to the point where there is now a major geological shift. Anthropogenic security takes that geological argument and says to mitigate the effects of this human impact on the planet, that both climate change and preventing the future spread of pandemics have to be approached in a holistic way. They're not mutually exclusive. Protection of forest habitats are not only carbon sinks to absorb carbon dioxide emissions, but they also prevent unknown novel viruses or bacteria that exist in those forests from making the zoonotic jump into humans. Okay. This is my term, anthropogenic security. Here's an example. Where did COVID-19 probably emerge from, as well as the plague of the 1900s? This very rural province known as Yunnan. It's rural, it's forested, it has a lot of forests and a lot of caves where bats live. As China modernizes and exploits the Yunnan province, zoonotic diseases have a greater chance of spreading. COVID-19 most likely emerged from here. And why do we think so? Because people in Vietnam, Laos, and this area here seem to be relatively immune to COVID-19, which means they've been exposed to it over a long period of time. What probably happened was a kind of event where somebody from Yunnan took the virus with them all the way to Wuhan. And then from Wuhan, and probably that wet market was a place that led to a super spreading event where just the virus simply took off afterwards. You see what this book is saying, An Anarchist History of Upland Southeast Asia? Well, Upland Southeast Asia includes Yunnan, parts of Vietnam, Laos, parts of Myanmar, and going all the way into Nagaland and Assam of India. The art of not being government. What does this territory suggest? This territory suggests that it's mountainous. And what James Scott is arguing, in these mountain areas, large armies can never conquer the peoples there. So in other words, they remained isolated and were never part of major states and civilizations. So not only the people are isolated there, but then also we could say the pathogens in these areas are isolated, or if they infect people, just isolated villages in these upland areas by people who want to remain isolated. With modernization, as we exploit the resources from this upland area, diseases can be more prevalent into the future. This is just one area that is a zone of future pandemics. There's areas in Africa, South America as well. Okay. Finally, we get to theories of human nature. Okay. And they work like this. Realism, the idea that people and nations are always in conflict, were articulated by the Greek historian Thucydides, which we'll talk about during the readings lecture, Machiavelli, and Hobbes. The idea that people can collaborate and cooperate, it's inherent in their nature, the liberal school, was kind of expounded by the Enlightenment thinker Immanuel Kant. Now, so far, these are all the questions we're going to use. In other words, would this theory help us answer? Well, questions 1 through 7. And 1 through 7 are going to be examined throughout this course, and pandemics of the past can help us answer these questions in the present. Nonetheless, if we look at the story of smallpox and you see how early smallpox might have originated, maybe as early as 10,000 BC, with the first agricultural settlements. That's how long it's been with the human population. And when was it finally conquered? 1977. Now you saw references to those videos, right? Referring to the eradication of smallpox. But how could it occur? Well, the liberal school tells us the answer. Liberalism says when humans cooperate through bodies such as the World Health Organization, look at the benefits that humanity reaps from that cooperation, through liberal cooperation. Finally, our last video. Looking at the realist and liberal school. So the realist school stresses that humans and nations are inherently in the state of conflict and competition. Liberalism says humans can cooperate and collaborate and collaborate. There's another C. Cooperate, collaborate. Anyway. Ask yourself, and you probably know this answer, but which school does Trump belong to? And what about The Atlantic that produced this video?
Natural disasters, where damage comes from godlike geological forces. In epidemics, the damage comes from other people and the microbes spreading through their blood and breath. Natural disasters bring communities together, but outbreaks tear them apart. They make people frightened over their neighbors. To counter that, communities need clear-headed leaders, reliable information, and a unifying spirit. Mary T. Bassett, New York City's health commissioner, exemplifies those skills. In October 2014, when physician Craig Spencer was diagnosed with Ebola after returning to New York from Guinea, Bassett stood out as a voice of calm. She appeared on the news, assuring New Yorkers that they had nothing to fear from the virus. She held town hall meetings with the Liberian community to ensure that they weren't being discriminated against. She joined the mayor and his wife in eating meatballs at the restaurant that Spencer had visited in the days before he was admitted to the hospital, and tweeted a photo of the meal. There were people lined up around the block, she told me. That was part of tamping down public panic and speaking out against stigma. Meanwhile, television personality Donald Trump had also taken to Twitter. He called Spencer a very selfish man. He described Barack Obama as a psycho for not banning flights from the Ebola-afflicted countries, even though no direct flights existed. Counterintuitively, such bans actually increase the odds that outbreaks will spread, in part because they discourage health workers from helping in foreign outbreaks for fear that they'll be denied re-entry. And Trump clearly felt that such Americans should be denied re-entry. "Keep them out of here," he tweeted. "They are great, but must suffer the consequences." Trump is now president. When he faces his first major epidemic, as his predecessors have, he will likely project his impulsivity, xenophobia, and cavalier attitude towards facts to over 52 million followers with a speed that no virus could match. The president's readiness to buy into conspiracy theories could sway a populace that during the time of Ebola were already prone to disproportionate paranoia. His tendency to label what he disagrees with as fake news will zip through social media networks that are already struggling to stop malicious parties from seeding inaccurate information to vulnerable people. And his isolationist rhetoric will spread among an America already polarized by extreme partisanship and a world increasingly given to nationalism. Such nationalism could be catastrophic because diseases demand global cooperation. Viruses spread too easily. No travel ban will stop them. No wall, no matter how big or beautiful, will hold them back. So the best way of preventing pandemics is to contain outbreaks before they get a chance to spread. The US cannot possibly consider itself protected if other nations are not. America first cannot mean America alone.
Okay, and obviously The Atlantic belongs to the liberal school. Look how many times they refer to cooperation And of course, nationalism is kind of seen as the antithesis of the liberal school because nationalism leads to competition and conflict. So hopefully you're getting an idea of the various theories to help you think about this virus. Now, what are we going to do in the next lecture is now just take a variety of these theories and examine them in the articles that I assigned you. Okay, very good. Thank you.